Volume data 2, 1. Volume check, 2, 1. Yeah, all right. I think that's working. I think you can hear me. Let's put the Immich on a Synology NAS. I'm going to run through this a little bit quickly and then backtrack, but I just want to say up front, I know that I have an Immich install video for Synology NAS already, but they update this app a lot, and it is under very active development, so the installation process changes quite a bit. So this is just the latest way of installing Immich on a Synology NAS. So let's start by going to Docs, and then Install, and we're going to scroll down to the section that says Docker Compose, which is recommended. That's a good sign for us. Docker Compose is the recommended method. All right, let's skip down here to step 1, download the required files. So what it's basically saying here is that it wants you to create a folder, preferably called image-app, and then you want to put these two files in here, dockercompose.yml and .env. So let's go to our Synology NAS, and let's do that. We're going to go to File Station. We will go to our Docker share, which you should have if you install Container Manager, which if you don't have, just go to the Package Center and then type in Container Manager. And if you're pretty close, it should show up. If it's not showing up for you, maybe you've got a J series of Synology NAS. That means that it is not available on your model of Synology NAS, but maybe Google around and see if others have gotten it to work. So I'm in my Docker share. I'm going to create a new folder, and you can call it whatever you want. You could call it Nextcloud, but that would be totally wrong and really confusing. So I'm just going to call mine image-app as they recommend. So we've got an image-app folder. We're going to go in here. Let's go back to our steps here. We want to download these two files, dockercompose.yml and .env. So if you just click on these files once, they will start to download. And once you've got them downloaded, go ahead and throw them in this folder. So I'm going to do that right now. Here we go, and I'm just dragging them in here, and I'm going to overwrite because I don't have anything else in here. And I think I accidentally downloaded this file twice, so I'm going to rename you to just dockercompose.yml. And you'll notice this says example.env and not .env, and that's because sometimes if you name a file .env, kind of stays hidden from the system, so we'll just have to rename that before we start our Docker container. Let's go back to the steps here. We can skip over all this. Actually, if you're curious, this one is for hardware transcoding, and this one is for machine learning. So I will talk about that at the end of the video. Let's keep going down. All right, so step 2 is to populate the env file with custom values. So it gives you an idea here of what it wants you to change. So let's go into our NAS and edit this file. I'm actually going to rename this file, and I'm just going to end it with .txt. That way it will open up in the text editor, which if you don't have, just go to the Package Center and type in text editor, and it should show up if you are pretty close, and there it goes. That's all you need. You'll install it, and then it can open up .txt files, and it can open up .yml files. So we'll open up this env file. And those instructions said you might want to make two changes. One is the library. So this is where your photos are going to be stored. If you have a specific location on your Synology NAS where you want them to be stored, click into File Station. Let's say that you want it stored in whatever folder. Click Properties and copy that location, and that's what you want to put in there. So you don't need this period either. That's what you want to do. I would say if you're not that familiar with Docker or Immich and you just want to try it out, leave this as ./library. And this means that it's going to look for a folder called library wherever this specific text file lives. So I would suggest keeping it like that, and then later on you can maybe point this at another library. I would definitely not point this at your Synology Photos library or anything like that right now, just because you should get an idea of how this works before you start messing around with some of your only images. Anyways, so we are fine with that. And then the other thing I wanted us to change was this guy here, db password. So any line in this file here, I'm actually going to close out of here. I'm going to rename this not to .txt. I'm going to rename this to .yml, and this will be a little bit easier to read. And I'll right-click, open with text editor. Cool. So you can see any line that begins with a pound or hashtag is actually just a note. So we have a note right here that you should change this to a random password, so I will do that. Random password. There we go. And that's good to go. So I'm going to hit File. Actually, before I do that, I'm just going to make a note. I need to make a library folder, and I need to make a Postgres folder. So I'm going to File, Save, exit out of here, and I will make those two folders right now. So I'll make a library folder and a Postgres folder. There we go. Next, I do need to make some changes to the dockercompose.yaml. So I'll right-click and open with text editor. And let's see here. First of all, I think I need to make one small change. Ports. Thank you, Immich, for using port 2283. No one else uses this port. A lot of times apps will use port 3000 or 8080 or 80 or 443. They have their own reasons for doing that, but it is nice that they're just using 2283. If you needed to change this for any reason, that's where you would do it. Leave this number alone. You could change this number. This is how we're going to access Immich, though. You will, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, you'll find out if it's an issue in a little bit. let's come down here to where it says model cache. So under Immich machine learning, there's a section called volumes, and then it just says model cache : /cache, which gives you the impression that this is a folder and this is not a folder. And that's correct. This is what you would call a Docker volume. You can look that up if you want, but I'm going to change that from a Docker volume to a folder. And I'm just going to type in /, and now it is going to look for a folder where this text file lives called model-cache. And that is the only change that I need to make here, except, I'm going to delete this on the bottom. I don't think I need to delete it, but I am going to. So I'll click File, Save. Let me copy that folder name, because this needs to be exactly correct. So model cache, I'm going to exit out of here and create that folder. And there we go. And that is everything that we need for Immich to run, except I do need to make one change. It says it here too. So step 3, start the containers. So it just says you can run a command called docker compose up -d, and that is what you would do on Linux in command line. That's what you do. We are in Linux on Synology NAS. This runs in Linux, but we're not running it via command line. We can actually just do that through Container Manager. So we just need to make this one change here. Does it mention it in here? And that's to change the name of the .env file. Yeah, so right here, it says make sure that you rename your example.env to .env. So let's do that. I'm going to rename you to .env. And if you need to make any changes to this in the future, just rename it to .yml or .txt and you can make those changes. I prefer .yml just because it formats the coding a little bit in a way that's a little bit easier to look at. So let's start up Container Manager. We'll click on Project, Create. Project name, I'm going to call this Immich. You can call it whatever you want. You could call it Nextcloud. You could call it PhotoPrism, and you'd be totally wrong and confuse yourself, but I'm going to stick with Immich. Under Path, I'm going to set this path to Docker Immich app. And now it's going to say that there's already a docker compose.yml in the selected path. There is an existing Docker, I think they fixed that. I think they used to be wrong. Use an existing, we want to use the existing docker compose.yaml. We'll click OK. And you'll see that we get a little error here. That property start interval is not allowed. So it would want me to delete this line. My buddy Ryan informed me that this is all, I think if you run the health check, it actually doesn't work. So I'm just going to delete the health check in here. And then I will click Next. Just make sure you're deleting that whole section that I just deleted. And then here where it says set up web portal via web station, I'm going to leave that unchecked. Click Next and then start the project once it is created. I'm going to click Done, and that clicking Done here is the same thing as when instructions say to use docker compose up -d. So we'll click Done, and it's going to pull all of this stuff, and it should be working. And the way that we're going to access this is on port 2283, that same port number that I showed you in the document. So you will just need the IP address of your Synology NAS, :2283, and I can't move this folder behind you, so I can't show you that right now. Let me wait till this finishes up, and I'll show you how to look at your IP address. All right, we've got exit code 0, which means that it was a success, and it doesn't say error code 0, it's exit code. And then Project Immich was successfully built. That doesn't mean it's working, but it does mean that it was built successfully. So if we've got a green light, that's a good sign. If I click on container, I've got 4 different Immich containers, so that's also a good sign. So let's access Immich. I'm going to click on Project, double-click Immich, YAML configurations. And you can see in here under Services Immich Server, that's what we want to go into, that there is this section called Ports. And this first port number is the one that we want. So let me scooch you in a little bit. Let me scooch you over. If you don't know the IP address of your Synology NAS, just come up to Widgets and make sure that System Health is checked. You can hit that plus button. And then whatever's under LAN 1 should be your IP address. If not, it's one of these other guys, but it's most likely LAN 1. So in my case, I'm going to type in 192.168.86.60:2283. So let's do that. And I need to make sure that I'm typing in http://192.168.86.60:2283, and that should bring me to Immich. And there we go. If you type in HTTPS, it will not work, at least through this method. Also, you can use your Synology's name. So if, in my case, my server name is Night Vision, so I can type in nightvision.local:2283. That will also work. So there you go. You've got Immich up and running. You can click Get Started and run through registration and all that. There's a ton to Immich. They've got a lot of great documentation on their website. Under the docs section, you can read all about how to use it. So I will say, I just wanted to go back because I skipped over 2 pieces of the install that were kind of important, and that is hardware acceleration and, well, transcoding and machine learning. So I believe that the Synology NAS can do transcoding because Synology NASs do support Quick Sync Video, QSV. So if you want to get that working, you can download this file. I would say get comfortable with knowing Docker and stuff first before you try and do this because you could kind of mess up your install. But yeah, I mean, if you're just testing this out, why not? Just go for it. See what happens. See if you can get it working. As far as machine learning goes, though, I don't think that's the Synology NAS has the required hardware to support machine learning. I don't know that for a fact, but I don't think that it does. Hardware transcoding, by the way, I believe has changed because if I click, they have a section here where they talk about it. Yeah, hardware transcoding. It does say here what is supported, so QuickSync should be good. There are some limitations here, but it says under limitations that currently only encoding is on by default. But I believe in a recent update, they did make it so it can decode as well, which is pretty useful. So if you want to play around with hardware encoding, you can mess around with that. I'm not going to go over that in this tutorial because it's meant to be a little bit more of a beginner's guide in setting up Docker containers, especially a more advanced one like Immich. But there you go. Another thing you should note is that you can only access Immich while you're on your local network. So if you are at home with your Synology NAS, this will work. If you are at the airport, coffee shop, on a vacation, your parents' house, whatever, it is not going to work on their Wi-Fi. So you either have to use a VPN in order to access Immich. You'll need to, if you know what a reverse proxy is, you're probably not watching this video, but if you do, you can set up a reverse proxy for Immich. That's what lets you use a custom domain name. So you could type in, immich.app, and it would take you here or whatever. Well, probably not one. That one's taken, but volumedata21.app, and I could have it go here. And then your other method is setting something up like Synology NAS. That would also work. I'm not sure if you can access Docker containers through Quick Connect. That is something that I don't know. That would be the easiest method, but I'm going to look into it. But there you go. You have successfully installed Immich on a Synology NAS in 2024 at around almost July-ish. So good luck to you. Hope that helped you out.